The dust of the desert tastes like old chalk on the back of my tongue. That is the first sensation before I even open my eyes. It is the taste of the limestone cliffs that cage us in, the omnipresent powder that settles into the pores of our skin and the weave of our sheets. I shift, and the wooden headrest presses hard against the base of my skull, just behind the ear. To a foreigner, sleeping with one's head propped on a curved block of wood might seem like torture. But the stiff support keeps the spine straight, and more importantly, keeps the head elevated away from the scorpions and biting beetles that patrol the floor in the dark. I slide the headrest away and let my head fall onto the coarse linen sheet. The air in the room is still and cold. The desert steals the heat the moment the sun dies, and the thick mud brick walls of our house, in the place of truth, hold that chill well into the morning. I listen. The silence is absolute. No birds sing in this desolate valley. There is only the rhythmic, heavy breathing of my wife, Neferet, beside me, and the faint, dry scratching of a mouse in the thatch of the roof. I sit up. The darkness is grainy, alleviated only by a faint gray square where the high window cuts through the wall. I swing my legs over the edge of the sleeping platform. My feet find the floor, which is packed earth, hard as stone and cool to the touch. I navigate the room by memory. I know exactly where the limestone stool sits and where the cedar chest rests against the wall. I reach out and my fingers brush the rough plaster of the wall until I find the niche. My hand closes around the flint striker and the small clay lamp. The smell of the lamp is pungent, rancid animal fat and charred linen wick. It is the smell of my trade. With a sharp strike, a spark catches the tinder, and I transfer the flame to the wick. The light blooms, orange and sputtering, casting long, dancing shadows against the whitewashed walls. The room reveals itself in flickering vignettes. The woven mats, the folded linen, and the painted bust of an ancestor watching me from his shelf with wide, kohl-rimmed eyes. I move to the wash area, a small section of the room sloped toward a limestone drain. Water is life here, and it is heavy. Every drop we use must be carried up the steep path from the cultivation in the valley below by the water carriers. To waste, it is a sin against the household. I pour a small amount from a red clay jar into a shallow copper basin. The water is cold enough to make my fingers ache. I cup it in my hands and splash my face. The shock creates a sudden clarity, chasing away the last fog of sleep. I take a small pinch of natron, the cleaning salt harvested from the lake beds, and scrub it against my skin. It stings slightly, gritty and abrasive, stripping away the oil and sweat of the night. It smells faintly of sulfur and brine. I rinse carefully, letting the water trickle down my chest, catching the droplets before they hit the floor to rub them into my arms. Next is the mouth. I take a fraying chew stick, a twig of the toothbrush tree, and work the fibrous end against my teeth. I can feel the grit of the desert there, too. The sand is in everything, even the flour of our bread, grinding our teeth down year by year. I spit into the drain. Now the ritual of the razor. I am a scribe, a man of the bureaucracy, not a laborer who lets his beard grow wild. I take my bronze razor from its leather pouch. The metal is dull in the lamplight, greenish at the handle. I rub a little oil onto my jaw, moringa oil, smooth and nutty. The bronze scrapes against my skin with a metallic rasp. I have to be careful. The blade requires honing, and a slip means a cut that flies will find within minutes. I shave my chin, my cheeks, and then carefully my scalp. The sensation of the cool air hitting my freshly shaven head is sharp and clean. I dress. First comes the loincloth, a simple triangle of linen tied around the waist. Then the tunic. I choose a piece of linen that Neferet washed 3 days ago. It has been beaten against stones and bleached in the sun, but it is still stiff. I pull it over my head. The fabric is cool and smells of the river and the alkaline soap. It drapes to my knees because I am going to the great place to record the work of the tomb builders. I add my sash. It is a long strip of finer, whiter linen. I wrap it around my waist once, twice, pulling it tight to support my back, and let the pleated ends hang down the front of my kilt. I adjust the fabric so it sits perfectly. Appearance is order. Order is Mott. To be disheveled is to invite chaos. I sit on the limestone stool and pick up my sandals. They are made of woven papyrus and palm fiber, stiff and creaking as I slide my feet into them. The thong passes between my first and second toes. I tie the straps around my ankles. Neferet is awake now. I hear the rustle of the sheets and the soft exhale of her waking. She does not speak yet. The morning is too young for words. She moves to the hearth in the front room. I follow the smell of the fire she is building. It is not a wood fire. Wood is too precious to burn for a simple breakfast. She burns dried animal dung patties. The smoke is thick, acrid, and earthy, hanging low in the room before drifting toward the vents. She hands me a bowl. Breakfast is simple. It is a loaf of emmer bread, dense and heavy in my hand. The crust is dark, almost burnt, but the inside is sour and chewy. I break off a piece. It requires effort to chew. With it, I eat 2 onions, peeling back the papery brown skin to reveal the shiny, white layers beneath. The onion is sharp, biting the tongue and watering the eyes, but it wakes the stomach. To drink, there is beer. It is not the clear, golden wine of the nobles, but the thick, nutritious beer of the people. It is served in a rough pottery cup. The liquid is opaque, full of grain husk and sediment. It tastes sour and yeasty, like liquid bread. It coats the throat and settles heavily in the belly, providing the fuel I will need for the hike over the ridge. I finish quickly. The sun is nearing the horizon. I gather my tools. My pallet is my badge of office. It is a long, rectangular piece of wood, polished smooth by years of handling. It has 2 circular depressions at one end. One for a cake of black ink made from soot and gum. The other for red ink made from ochre. I check my reed brushes. They are stored in a hollow slot in the center of the pallet. I have 3 good ones, the ends chewed to a fine, fibrous point. I slide the pallet into the sash at my waist. I also take a small leather bag containing a few flakes of limestone, ostraca. Papyrus is expensive, imported from the marshes of the delta, far to the north. For daily notes, attendance records, and rough drafts, we write on stone. I step out of my door and into the street. The village of Setmot is a long, narrow scar in the desert floor. The sun has not yet crested the eastern cliffs, so the village is bathed in a blue, pre-dawn twilight. The air is deceptively cold, perhaps 50 degrees. I can see my breath in faint puffs. The street is narrow, barely wide enough for 2 men to walk abreast without brushing shoulders. The houses are packed tight, sharing walls, a honeycomb of mud and stone. I hear the sounds of the village waking up around me. The braying of a donkey echoes off the canyon walls, a harsh, sawing sound that grates on the ears. Somewhere a baby cries, a thin, high wail. I hear the slap of dough being thrown against a hot oven wall. I nod to Painup, a foreman, who is stepping out of his gate. He is a large man, his chest scarred from years of hewing stone. He carries a copper chisel wrapped in a rag. We do not speak. The morning trudge is a solemn affair. We walk toward the northern gate of the village. The Medjay, the Nubian police force who guard us, are already at their post. They lean on their spears, their dark skin merging with the shadows. They check us as we pass. We are the king's workmen, the servants in the place of truth, but we are also possessors of secrets. We know where the Pharaoh will sleep for eternity. We know where the gold is, so we are watched. Scribe, the guard grunts, acknowledging me. I nod and pass through the gate. Now begins the climb. The path to the Valley of the Kings leads up and over the ridge of the Theban mountain. It is a steep, winding trail of crushed limestone and flint. As we begin the ascent, the sun finally breaks the horizon. It happens in an instant. One moment, the world is blue and gray. The next, it is on fire. The sun hits the white limestone cliffs above us, and the glare is blinding. The light does not just illuminate, it strikes. I squint, my eyes tearing up against the sudden brilliance. This is why I line my eyes with coal. the black galena powder deflects the glare, saving us from the blindness that takes so many old men. The heat follows the light immediately. The cold of the morning evaporates, replaced by a radiant warmth that will soon turn into a furnace. I can feel the sweat beginning to bead on my upper lip. And under the heavy wig I have chosen to wear today for dignity. The climb is hard. My calves burn with the effort. I can hear the heavy breathing of the stonecutters and plasterers behind me. The sound of sandals crunching on loose gravel is a rhythmic march. We carry our tools, our water skins, and our baskets of food. We reach the crest of the ridge. The view is staggering, though I have seen it 3,000 times. To the east, the green ribbon of the Nile cuts through the desert, flanked by fields of emerald grain and palm groves. I can see the tiny shapes of boats with their white sails catching the north wind. It looks like paradise from here, but we turn our backs on the life of the river. We look west into the great place. It is a cauldron of silence, a canyon of jagged cliffs and scree slopes, baked by the sun, utterly devoid of plant or beast. There is only rock and the sky. We descend into the valley. The path is treacherous here, loose shale sliding underfoot. We reach the valley floor, where the heat is already gathering, trapped by the canyon walls. I arrive at the entrance of the tomb, currently under construction. It is a gaping square hole cut into the base of the cliff. A ramp of rubble leads down into the dark. I find my spot near the entrance, a flat stone where I can oversee the men. I sit, arranging my kilt so the pleats fall straight. I take my pallet from my sash. I take the small water pot from my kit and pour a few drops onto the dried cakes of ink. I pick up a reed brush, put the tip in my mouth to wet it, and then swirl it in the black ink. "Attendance," I announce. My voice sounds flat in the open air. The men gather. They are a rough crew, covered in the dust of the mountain. They smell of old sweat and onions. "Kansu," I call out. Here, a plasterer answers, raising a hand caked in white lime. "Siper." "Here." "Neferhotep." Silence. I look up. The men shift their feet. "Neferhotep is not here," Painab grunts. He says his wife is bleeding. He is brewing remedies for her. I dip my brush in the red ink, the color of danger, of debt, of deficiency. On the flake of limestone in my lap, I write the date in hieratic script, the flowing cursive of business. Year 2, second month of Akhet, day 18. Underneath I write, Neferhotep. Absent. Beside it I write the reason. His wife bleeds. It is a valid excuse. I wipe the brush and switch back to black ink. "Secure the lamps," I order. This is the most crucial inventory. We are issued wicks and oil by the treasury. They are weighed and counted. To steal oil is to steal from the Pharaoh. To steal a wick is to leave a man in the dark, in the belly of the mountain. The basket of wicks is brought to me. These are twists of linen, greased with fat. I count them, 50. I weigh the copper vessel of sesame oil. It is full. Distribute them, I say. The men take their lights. They move toward the tomb entrance. As they cross the threshold from the blinding white sun into the pitch black of the underworld, they strike their flints. One by one, the orange glows ignite, disappearing down the sloping corridor. I stay at the entrance. The air coming out of the tomb is stale, smelling of dry earth and the sweat of 100 years. I can hear the clink, clink, clink of copper chisels starting to bite into the limestone. The rhythm of the day has begun. I look at my ostracon. The surface is rough. I smooth it with my thumb. I have to draft a letter to the vizier today requesting more copper chisels. The ones we received last month are soft, the alloy poor. They blunt after a dozen strikes. The men are grumbling. When the men grumble, the work slows. When the work slows, Mott is disturbed. I dip my brush in the black ink again. The sun is now high enough to touch my feet. The heat is rising. I begin to write. The sun has climbed to its zenith, transforming the valley into a crucible of white fire. Ra is no longer a gentle warmth upon the skin, but a heavy, oppressive weight that presses down upon the shoulders of every man in the great place. The limestone cliffs, towering and jagged, act as a mirror, reflecting the heat back and forth until the air itself seems to shimmer and warp. I stand beneath the scant shade of a canvas awning, stretched between two wooden poles near the tomb entrance. My station is not merely to write, but to witness, to measure, to ensure that order, Mott, is maintained against the chaos of theft and laziness. Before me lies the pile of copper. This is the heartbeat of our labor. Without the copper, the stone does not yield. I signal to the guardian to bring the balance scale. It is a simple instrument, a polished wooden beam suspended on a cord, with two copper pans hanging from flaxen ropes. The wood of the beam is smooth from years of handling, dark with the oils of many hands. I kneel in the dust, my linen kilt bunching around my knees, and open my wooden chest. Inside rests the standard weight, the deben. It is a smooth, rounded stone, cool to the touch despite the ambient heat. I place it in the right pan. Bring the chisels, I command, though my voice is low. The heat steals the desire to shout. The smith, a burly man with skin the color offered clay and arms scarred by flying sparks, steps forward. He drops a bundle of chisels into the left pan. The metal clatters, a harsh, dull sound in the thick air. These are not the sharp, pointed tools of the morning. These are the victims of the mountain. Their tips are blunted, mushroomed over, and mangled by the relentless impact against the limestone bedrock. I watch the beam. It tips, sways, and finds its equilibrium. 120 Deben, I announce. I take up my reed brush. It is a stalk of rush, the end chewed by my own teeth into a fine, fibrous, bristled tip. It is an extension of my finger. I dip it into the water pot, then rub it briskly against the cake of black ink on my palette. The ink is a mixture of soot from cooking pots and gum arabic, smelling faintly of burnt wood and earth. On a smooth flake of limestone, an ostracon large enough to fill my palm, I write the record. The script flows from me, hieratic characters linking together in a cursive stream. I do not draw the intricate birds and figures carved upon the temple walls. Those are for the gods. I write the language of business, of speed. Issued to the smith, 15 chisels. Returned, 15 chisels. Weight loss, 4 Deben. This is critical. If the weight loss is too great, it means the smith is stealing copper to sell in the villages downriver. If the weight is too little, it means the workmen have not been striking hard enough. The copper tells the truth that men might try to hide. The smith takes the bundle, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of a grimy hand. He will take them to the forge to be heated and beaten back into shape. The smell of hot metal and charcoal drifts from his station, mixing with the pervasive scent of dry dust and old stone. I rise and move toward the tomb entrance. The transition is blinding. I step from the glare of the valley floor into the throat of the earth. Inside, the air changes instantly. It is cooler, yes, but it is heavy, stagnant, and thick with the dust of pulverized rock. It tastes of chalk. It coats the back of the throat and dries the tongue. I walk down the sloping corridor, the ground beneath my sandals littered with stone chips. The light here comes not from the sun, but from the lamps. Every few paces, a niche in the rock holds a clay bowl filled with sesame oil or animal fat. A twisted flax wick burns in the oil. We have salted the wicks carefully. The salt prevents the flame from smoking. We cannot have soot obscuring the work of the draftsman or staining the ceiling. The sound in the corridor is a rhythmic, hypnotic percussion. Copper striking limestone. Clack, clack, clack. It echoes, amplifying until it feels as though the mountain itself is having palpitations. I pass the carriers, boys and young men with wicker baskets on their shoulders, hauling the debris up and out. They are coated in white dust, looking like ghosts or statues brought to life. They grunt as they pass, eyes downcast, navigating the uneven floor. Deep in the chamber, I find the foreman of the left gang. He is inspecting a vein of flint that cuts through the limestone. Flint is dangerous, It shatters the copper chisels. How is the progress? I ask. He gestures to the wall. The masons have smoothed a section, perhaps 4 cubits wide. The surface is pale and even, ready for the draftsman to lay out the grid for the decorations. We are behind, he admits, his voice echoing flatly in the small chamber. The stone here is hard. We need more lamp oil. The wicks are burning too fast. I nod, taking my limestone flake and noting this down. Request for fat. Check delivery from the treasury. I watch the draftsmen for a moment. They are the artists, the ones who follow the masons. One is mixing red ochre in a shell. He holds a taut string dipped in the red paint. He presses it against the wall and snaps it, leaving a perfectly straight red line. This grid will guide the proportions of the gods they will paint. The smell of the ochre is metallic, rusty, distinct from the chalky dust. I verify their attendance. I count heads. If a man is not here, I must know why. Is he sick? Is he brewing beer for a festival? Is he burying his mother? Or is he merely idle? If he is idle, his ration of grain will be docked. The Pharaoh feeds only those who sweat. The heat inside the tomb, while shaded, is stifling. It is a humid heat, born of human breath and burning oil trapped in stone. I feel the perspiration trickling down my back, soaking the linen of my tunic. It is time to retreat. I emerge back into the blinding violence of the sun. It is midday. The work slows. The men drop their tools. It is time for the meal. We do not return to the village over the ridge. The hike is too steep to make twice in one day. Instead, we gather in the rest station, a collection of dry stone huts and overhangs nestled against the cliff face. I sit with the foreman and the senior draftsman. We are the hierarchy, and we eat apart from the chisel bearers and the mortar mixers. I find a flat stone in the shade and spread out a woven reed mat. My meal is wrapped in a linen cloth. I unfold it. First, the bread. It is a round, flat loaf of emmer wheat, baked yesterday in the village ovens. The crust is dark and thick. I break off a piece. The texture is dense and coarse. Despite the best efforts of the millers, fine desert sand always finds its way into the flour. I chew carefully. To bite down too hard is to risk cracking a tooth on a piece of grit. The taste is nutty, sour from the sourdough starter, and sustaining. Next, the onions. I have 2 bulbs, raw and pungent. I peel the papery skin, which flakes away in the dry air. I bite into the white flesh. It is sharp, spicy, bringing tears to my eyes, but it cleanses the mouth and cuts through the dust that has layered my tongue. The onion is life. It protects us from sickness in the heat. I have a small clay jar of lentils, cooked with garlic and perhaps a little animal fat for flavor. They are cold now, mushy and brown, but they are rich and filling. I scoop them up, using a piece of the bread as a spoon. And finally, the beer. I unstopper my small jug. The beer is thick, almost like a gruel. It is not the clear, golden water of the nobility. This is barley beer, dark and sweet, with the husks still floating in it. I strain it through my teeth as I drink. It is lukewarm from the heat of the day, but it is liquid, and my body craves it desperately. It tastes of fermentation and yeast. It settles heavily in the stomach, providing the energy required to finish the day. Around me, the sounds of the camp change. The rhythmic clacking of tools has stopped, replaced by the murmur of voices and the chewing of food. A draftsman named Neferhotep shifts on his mat near me. He wipes his mouth with his forearm. The water carriers are late again, he grumbles. The jar in the tomb is nearly empty. I nod, swallowing a mouthful of bread. I made a note of it yesterday, I say. The scribe of the treasury has been informed. The donkeys were said to be lame. Excuses, Neferhotep spits. They are selling the water to the villagers in the valley floor. We dry out like fish on a rack up here. I will write it again, I promise. I will make the report formal. This is the currency of my life. Complaints, rations, and disputes. As we eat, a workman approaches our circle. He waits respectfully until I acknowledge him. He is a younger man, his face streaked with sweat and limestone dust. Scribe, he says, looking at his feet. I cannot work this afternoon. I look at him. Why? It is my wife, he says. She is bleeding. The birth is coming. I must go down to the village. I study his face. He looks anxious. This does not seem like a deception. I reach for my palette again. Even during the meal, the record must be kept. I wet the red ink cake this time. Red is for pauses, for stops, for problems. Name. Pen up, he says. I write his name on the limestone flake. Next to it, I write the reason. His wife bleeding. Go, I say. But if I see you drinking in the beer house tonight, you will lose 3 days of rations. He nods, bowing low, and scrambles up the path toward the ridge that separates us from the village. I finish my meal in silence. The heat is heavy, inducing a drowsiness that I must fight. The flies are relentless, buzzing around the remnants of the lentils and the rim of the beer jar. I wave them away lazily. After the meal, I take a moment to tend to my tools. A scribe is only as good as his kit. I inspect my reed brushes. The fibers of the one I used this morning have become too soft, too splayed. It produces a thick, clumsy line. I take a small bronze knife from my belt and slice the tip off the reed. Then I place the fresh end in my mouth. I chew it gently, rotating it, breaking down the fibers until they form a perfect, stiff brush. I test it on a scrap of limestone. The line is crisp and thin. It is satisfying. I check my ink. The cakes are drying out in the heat. I add a few drops of water from my pot to soften them. The water is precious, but the ink is sacred. It is the blood of Thoth, the god of wisdom. The sun has moved slightly, casting long, sharp shadows across the valley floor. The peak of the mountain, the great pyramid of nature that watches over us, glows in the harsh light. We call her Meretseger, she who loves silence. She is the cobra goddess who dwells in the peak. I look up at the mountain. The heat haze makes the summit dance. It is beautiful and terrifying. We work in her shadow, violating the earth to build the house of eternity for the Pharaoh. And she watches. The foreman stands up and claps his hands. The sharp sound cuts through the lethargy of the midday break. Back to the mountain, he calls out. The men groan, a collective sound of reluctance, but they rise. They dust off their kilts, pick up their copper tools, and lift the heavy baskets. I pack my unfinished bread back into the cloth. I slide my pallet into its wooden case. I pick up my roll of papyrus. I will need it this afternoon for the official log of the day's progress. I stand and look out over the valley. To the east, far below near the river, I can see the green strip of cultivation, the palm trees, the life of the Nile. It looks like another world. Here there is only rock, sun, and the dead. I check the position of the sun. We have perhaps 4 hours of light remaining before the valley becomes too dark to navigate safely. 4 hours of dust. 4 hours of counting baskets. 4 hours of ensuring that history is remembered. I take a deep breath of the hot, dry air, smelling the ancient dust, and turn back toward the dark mouth of the tomb. The work continues. The Pharaoh's eternity will not build itself. The sun has moved past the zenith, settling into the heavy, oppressive quadrant of the western sky. In the valley, the heat does not simply radiate from above. It rises from the canyon floor, reflecting off the limestone cliffs until the air itself shimmers like water. My station is a small patch of shade beneath a canvas awning stretched between 2 boulders. But the shade offers little relief. It only dims the blinding glare. The air is still, thick with the dust of excavation and the metallic tang of copper tools grinding against rock. I shift my weight on the reed mat. My legs have been folded beneath me for hours, and the circulation is sluggish. Pins and needles prick at my calves. I stretch one leg out, wincing as the knee joint pops. A sound that seems unnervingly loud in the lull between mallet strikes. My linen kilt is damp, clinging uncomfortably to my thighs, heavy with the sweat of the last 4 hours. This is the long drag, time of day when the initial energy of the morning has evaporated, and the promise of the evening meal is still too distant to offer comfort. The work moves slower now. Inside the tomb shaft, the gangs are rotating more frequently, the men stumbling out into the light, gasping for air, their bodies coated in a paste of white dust and sweat. They look like ghosts or statues animated by some reluctant magic. I reach for my water jar. It is warm, the porous clay unable to cool the liquid in this furnace. I take a sip, swirling the tepid water to clear the grit from my teeth before swallowing. It tastes of the earth. My task for the afternoon is tedious but critical. The foreman of the left side has called for a mid-shift weighing of the copper chisels. The consumption of copper is a matter of high state security. Metal is precious, belonging to Pharaoh, and the scribes are the guardians of its weight. If a chisel wears down too quickly, it is noted. If a worker is suspected of scraping off filings to steal and melt down later, it is noted. I arrange my tools. The wooden pallet, polished smooth by years of handling, holds my 2 cakes of ink. The black, made from soot mixed with gum arabic, and the red, made from ochre. I dip my rush brush into the small water pot attached to the pallet, then rub it against the black cake. The ink forms a thick, glossy pool. A worker approaches, carrying a basket of chisels. He is a stonecutter named Pharaoh, a man with broad shoulders and a reputation for a short temper. His hands are calloused, the skin cracked and stained with the gray dust of the mountain. He drops the basket near my feet. The sound of metal clattering against metal is dull and heavy. Pharaoh wipes his forehead with the back of his wrist, leaving a streak of mud. He does not look at me. He looks at the water jar. I nod toward the jar, a silent permission. He squats and drinks deeply from a ladle, the water spilling over his chin and cutting clean lines through the dust on his chest. I pick up the first chisel. It is warm to the touch, heated by the friction of the work. The head is mushroomed over, the metal splayed out from thousands of hammer blows. I place it on the scale. On the other side, I place the stone weights. The balance arm swings, creaking on its pivot. It settles. I dip the brush and write on a large flake of limestone and ostracan. I do not use papyrus for this. Papyrus is too expensive for rough accounting. The limestone flake is smooth on one side, pale and inviting. My hand moves automatically. Chisel 4, issued to Pharaoh. Weight 23 deben. It has lost 2 deben since the morning distribution. That is acceptable wear for the hard limestone they are cutting today. I mark a simple check next to the entry. I pick up the next tool. This one is different. The shaft is pitted and the point is blunted, but the weight feels light in my hand. I place it on the scale. The arm dips toward the stone weights. The chisel is significantly lighter than it should be. I look up at Painib. He is watching the scale, his eyes narrowed against the sun. I clear my throat. The dry air makes it a rasping sound. I ask him why this tool has lost 4 deben in half a day. Painib shrugs. He gestures toward the tomb entrance, a black square cut into the cliff face. He says the rock is full of flint nodules. He says the flint eats the copper. He says he had to resharpen it 3 times on the sandstone block. I look at the chisel again. The striations on the blade suggest heavy grinding. It is plausible. The geology of this valley is treacherous. Veins of flint run through the limestone like bones in flesh. If I accuse him of theft without proof, work stops. A dispute arises. The foreman is called. The afternoon is wasted. If I let it slide, and the inventory at the end of the month is short, the vizier's scribe will have my hide. I dip the brush in the red ink. I record the weight, but I add a small notation next to it. To be monitored. I hand the chisel back to him. He tosses it into the return basket and grabs a fresh one from the pile. He turns and walks back toward the tomb, his gait heavy, his feet kicking up small clouds of dust that hang suspended in the still air. The repetition of the work induces a trance. Pick up, weigh, record, wipe the brush, dip the brush. The sun creeps lower, changing the color of the valley walls. At noon, the cliffs were a bleached, blinding white. Now, as the afternoon stretches out, they deepen into gold and burnt orange. The shadows in the crevices grow longer, sharp black fingers reaching across the valley floor. My eyes burn. The glare is relentless, and the constant focus on the small, scratching script on the limestone flake strains my vision. I rub my temples with my thumb and forefinger, feeling the pulse of a headache beginning to throb behind my eyes. The smell of the place is distinct dry stone, stale sweat, and the faint, acrid scent of donkey dung from the pack animals tethered down the slope. A shout from the tomb entrance breaks my concentration. It is not a shout of alarm, but of instruction. The masons are hitting a difficult patch. I can hear the rhythm of the work change. The steady, metronomic tapping of the morning is replaced by irregular, forceful blows. They are using the heavy mauls now. I must record the progress. I cap my ink, stand up and stretch. My back cracks audibly. I pick up my palette and walk toward the tomb entrance. The transition from the blinding sunlight to the interior is jarring. I have to stop just inside the entrance to let my eyes adjust. The temperature drops instantly. It is cooler here, but the air is bad. It is thick with the smoke of the oil lamps, wicks floating in bowls of animal fat and sesame oil. The smoke stings the throat and waters the eyes. I walk down the sloping corridor. The walls here are rough-hewn, the plaster not yet applied. The gang is working in the second chamber. The noise is deafening in the confined space. Bronze strikes stone, wood strikes bronze. Men grunt with exertion. The light comes from the flickering lamps, casting wild, dancing shadows against the unfinished walls. I find the foreman, Nachtman. He is covered in white dust, his eyebrows and eyelashes thick with it, making him look like an old man. He is pointing at a fissure in the ceiling. I shout to be heard over the din. I ask for the measurement of the day's cut. Nachtman wipes his face with a rag, smearing the dust into gray streaks. He points to a red line painted on the wall near the floor. That was the morning mark. He points to the current face of the rock, perhaps 2 palms width deeper. It is slow progress. The rock here is brittle. If they strike too hard, the ceiling could crack. I make a mental note. 2 palms. I will write it down when I return to the light. I do not want to expose my palette to this dust. The grit ruins the brushes and makes the ink gritty. I turn to leave, but a worker blocks my path. It is a plasterer carrying a bucket of gypsum. He looks exhausted. His chest heaves, his ribs visible beneath the skin. He asks me if it is near sunset. He asks if the water carriers are coming back for a final run. I tell him the sun is still high enough. There is another hour of work, perhaps 2. He nods, resignation etched into his face, and trudges past me deeper into the dark. Emerging back into the sunlight feels like walking into a physical blow. The heat wraps around me again. I return to my station and sit. The headache is worse now, a tight band around my skull. I pick up the limestone flake again. I record the progress. Second chamber. Excavation proceeds. 2 palms depth. Rock quality poor. The light begins to change in earnest now. The harsh white of the midday sun softens into a rich, amber glow. This is the golden hour, though to us, it signals only the end of the endurance test. The shadows of the western cliffs are now stretching all the way across the valley floor, touching the toes of the eastern hills. The atmosphere in the camp shifts. The urgency of the work fades, replaced by a low-level anxiety about the night. The workers know they must finish their tasks to meet the quota, but their bodies are failing them. I see a man drop his mallet. He stares at it for a long moment, his hands hanging limp at his sides, before slowly bending to retrieve it. My stomach rumbles. I have not eaten since the mid-morning break. I think of the bread waiting at home, perhaps a piece of dried fish, and the sweet, thick beer that will wash the dust from my throat. The thought is a torment. I begin the preliminary cleanup. I wash my brushes in the water pot, squeezing the black ink out until the water runs gray, then clear. I scrape the surface of the ink cakes to ensure they are clean for tomorrow. I organize the ostraka, stacking the limestone flakes carefully. The ones with the day's accounting must be brought back to the village archives. The blank ones can stay. The sound of the chisel stops. It happens all at once, as if by a silent signal. The cessation of noise is sudden and shocking. The ringing in my ears rushes in to fill the silence. A collective exhale seems to rise from the earth. The men begin to emerge from the tomb. They do not run. They shamble. They are dark silhouettes against the darkening tomb entrance. They blink in the evening light, rubbing their eyes. The final ritual of the day begins. The collection of the tools. This is the most tense moment. Every chisel, every adze, every saw must be accounted for. I stand by the large wooden chest, the great box of the gang. The foreman stands beside me. The workers file past. Painib, I call out. He drops his chisels into the box. I count them. 4. Kansu. 3 chisels, 1 saw. Ipai. Ipai fumbles in his bag. He produces 2 chisels. He should have 3. The line stops. The silence stretches, heavy and dangerous. The foreman steps forward. Ipai looks frantic. He turns his bag inside out. Dust falls, but no chisel. I had it, Ipai says, his voice rising in panic. It was by the lamp. I put it down to move the basket. I look at my limestone record. Ipai was issued 3 chisels at dawn. If one is lost, the entire gang pays. The cost is deducted from their grain ration. The men behind Ipai begin to grumble. They are tired. They want to go home. They do not want to pay for Ipai's mistake. Check the basket, the foreman barks. Ipai runs back toward the tomb entrance. We wait. The sun is dipping below the horizon now, and the temperature is plummeting. The sweat on my skin turns cold. Minutes pass. The grumbling grows louder. Then Ipai emerges, running, holding the copper tool aloft. Found it, he yells. It rolled under the rubble. A collective groan of relief. He drops the chisel into the box. I nod. I make the final mark on the stone. All tools accounted for. The foreman locks the chest. He applies a lump of wet clay over the latch. I take my cylinder seal, hanging on a cord around my neck, and roll it across the clay. The impression of the jackal, the guardian of the necropolis, is left in the mud. The box is sealed. We gather our belongings. The walk back to the village is over the ridge. A steep climb before the descent into the hidden valley of the artisans. I pack my pallet and the recorded ostraka into my leather satchel. I shoulder the bag. It feels heavier than it did this morning. We begin the march. I walk slightly apart from the laborers, walking with the other scribes and the foremen. We are the administration, yet we walk the same dust, breathe the same air. The sky above is turning a deep, bruised purple. The first stars are visible. As we crest the ridge, the wind picks up, cold and biting. I pull my shawl tighter around my shoulders. Below us, the village of Deir el-Medina is already in shadow. I can see the small fires burning on the rooftops and in the courtyards. The smell of wood smoke and baking bread drifts up to meet us. It is the best smell in the world. My legs are heavy, my back aches, and my fingers are stained with ink. But the day is recorded. The copper is safe. The tomb has grown by 2 palms. Mad order has been maintained. I start the descent, my sandals slipping slightly on the loose scree. I anticipate the moment I can wash my feet and sit on my own mat, not as a scribe of the king, but as a man in his own house. The long drag is over. The night belongs to me. The great golden orb of Ra begins its descent behind the western peak, the mountain of silence that looms over the valley. The cliff face, which has radiated heat like an open furnace, oven for 12 hours, finally begins to surrender its intensity. The shadows of the royal tomb entrance stretch long and thin across the limestone chippings, turning the white dust to a bruised purple. My work for the state is finished for the day. I sit cross-legged on the limestone shelf outside the tomb entrance, organizing the tools of my existence. I take the reed brush I have been using, the tip frayed and stained black with carbon ink, and dip it into a small pot of water. I clean the bristles with my thumb and forefinger, watching the dark clouds of ink swirl and vanish in the water. I wipe the reed on a scrap of linen cloth. Next, I slide my wooden palette into its leather protective sleeve. The cakes of red and black pigment are dry. The papyrus roll, containing the day's tally of copper chisels issued and returned, is rolled tight and sealed with a dab of wet mud, which I press with my thumb. The workmen are filing out of the deep shaft. They are covered in limestone dust, looking like ghosts rising from the netherworld. Their voices, suppressed and hushed while inside the sacred corridors, rise in volume as they hit the open air. I hear the clatter of bronze tools being tossed into the collective baskets for the night. I stand and oversee the collection. It is my duty to ensure every chisel is accounted for. Copper is the flesh of the gods, and bronze is their bones. We cannot lose even a single Deben's weight of metal. Once the count is verified, I nod to the captain of the crew. We begin the trek home. We do not live in the valley of the work. We live over the ridge, in the place of truth. The commute is a steep hike up the goat paths that wind over the mountain spur. My calves burn with a familiar, dull ache that has been with me since my youth. The leather straps of my sandals chafe against the dust coating my feet. But the callus there is thick enough that I feel no pain. As we crest the ridge, the village comes into view below. It is a walled enclosure nestled in a desert bay, isolated from the rest of Thebes. From this height, it looks like a honeycomb of mud brick and limestone. The flat roofs form a patchwork of gray and brown. I can see the thin ribbons of smoke rising from dozens of courtyards. The evening fires have been lit. The smell reaches me before I descend, the distinct, acrid scent of burning donkey dung and dry scrub brush, mingled with the sweeter aroma of baking emmer wheat. The descent is faster. Gravity pulls us down toward the sanctuary of our walls. The sun dips below the horizon, and the light shifts rapidly from gold to a flat, gray twilight. The temperature drops. The sweat on my linen tunic cools, sending a shiver across my shoulders. I pass through the heavy wooden gates of the village. The 2 Medjay guards station their lean on their staves. They know my face. They know every face here. We are a closed community, bound by the secrets of the Pharaoh's tomb. I nod to them, and they let me pass without a word. The main street is narrow, barely wide enough for 2 men to walk abreast if they are carrying baskets. The walls of the houses rise up on either side, whitewashed, but stained with the dust of the desert. I navigate the turns by memory, my feet knowing the uneven texture of the packed earth floor. The noise here is intimate. I hear a mother scolding a child behind a wall. I hear the braying of a donkey in a stall. I hear the rhythmic grinding of grain against a quernstone. I reach my door. It is painted red, the limestone lintel inscribed with a prayer to Amun-Ra for the protection of my household. I step over the threshold, entering the first room of the house, the reception hall. The air inside is still and cooler than the street. The room is dimly lit by the last of the daylight, filtering in from the high, small windows near the ceiling. My wife, Merit, is in the back of the house, near the kitchen. I hear the slap of dough against a stone surface. I move to the brick bench built against the wall of the reception room. This is my altar and my seat of honor. I untie the sash of my kilt and let it loosen. I place my scribe's kit on a low wooden table. Merit enters from the back hall. She is wiping her hands on her skirt. Her face is flushed from the heat of the oven. She smiles, a tired but genuine expression that softens the lines around her eyes. She does not speak immediately, but goes to a large clay jar in the corner. She dips a ceramic cup into the water and brings it to me. I drink. The water is cool, stored in the porous clay that allows evaporation to chill the liquid. It tastes of the Nile, sweet and heavy with silt, but filtered through the settlement's settling tanks. It washes the limestone dust from my throat. Bring the basin, I say softly. She nods, and fetches a copper basin and a ewer. I hold my hands out. She pours the water over them. I scrub the ink stains on my fingers. The black carbon is stubborn, settling into the ridges of my fingerprints and under my nails. I use a small cake of natron soap, gritty and salty, to scour the skin. The water in the basin turns gray. I splash my face, washing away the mask of dust I have worn since sunrise. I take a linen towel and dry my skin. The rough fabric stimulates the blood flow. I feel human again. Dinner is served in the central hall. This room is the heart of the house, its ceiling higher than the others, supported by a single wooden column painted red. We sit on low stools with woven rush seats, gathered around a small table. The meal is simple but plentiful. We are well paid in grain, and my household does not know hunger. There is a stack of flatbread, round and warm, slightly charred at the edges. The crust is thick, protecting the soft, dense interior. There is a bowl of lentil stew, seasoned with cumin and coriander, floating with chopped onions. A plate holds a few dried figs and dates, their skins wrinkled and shiny. But the centerpiece is the beer. Merritt pours it from a spouted jar into my drinking bowl. It is thick, opaque, and nutritious, liquid bread. I have to blow the chaff aside before I drink. It is sour and filling, settling in my stomach like a heavy stone that radiates warmth. I tear a piece of bread and use it to scoop the lentils. The food is salty and savory. The onions are sharp, biting the tongue, clearing the sinuses of dust. We eat with our fingers. The only sound is the chewing and the occasional slurp of beer. My 2 sons are eating with us. They are quiet, respecting the fatigue of the day. The younger one, mere 7 years of age, watches me. He eyes the ink stains that remain on my cuticles. "Did you write the king's name today?" he asks. I pause, a piece of bread halfway to my mouth. "Not today," I answer. "Today was for counting copper. The king's name is for the walls, not the ledger." He nods, seemingly satisfied, though I know he dreams of the day he will hold the reed brush. After the meal, the lamp is lit. It is a simple clay saucer filled with castor oil. Merritt adds a pinch of salt to the oil to reduce the smoke and floats a twisted flax wick in the center. She brings a flame from the kitchen hearth. The wick catches, sputtering for a moment before settling into a steady, yellow tear of light. The shadows in the room jump and stabilize. This is the time for family, but for a scribe, it is also a time for instruction. I cannot let my sons grow up to be mere laborers. They must learn the script. I motion to the elder boy. He goes to the corner and retrieves a basket filled with ostraca, flakes of limestone, and broken pottery shards. We cannot waste papyrus on practice. The limestone flakes are free, littering the valley floor. "Sit," I command. He sits on the floor near the lamp, the light casting his profile in sharp relief. I hand him a reed brush and a small palette with a cake of black ink. I pour a few drops of water onto the palette to wet the pigment. "Write out the offering formula," I say. He dips the brush. He holds it correctly, not with a fist, but balanced between the thumb and forefinger. He begins to write on the smooth surface of the limestone flake. The reed makes a dry, scratching sound as it moves across the stone. I watch his hand. He is hesitant. He draws the owl hieroglyph, the letter M. The curve of the wing is too stiff. "Fluidity," I correct him. "The reed must flow like the river. Do not carve the stone, paint it." He tries again. I watch the ink glisten wetly in the lamplight before soaking into the porous stone. The smell of the wet ink, gum arabic, and soot is the scent of my life, and now it is becoming the scent of his. Merritt sits nearby, weaving a new basket from palm fronds. The rustle of the dry leaves provides a rhythm to the evening. The house is closing in on itself. The noises from the street have died down, replaced by the barking of wild dogs out in the desert and the low murmur of neighbors on their rooftops. I pick up an ostrakhan for myself. It contains a draft of a letter. I need to send to the vizier's office regarding the delay in the delivery of wood for the tomb's scaffolding. I scan the hieratic script, the cursive, flowing version of the holy signs. My eyes are tired. The characters seem to swim slightly in the flickering oil light. I make a mental note to revise the tone. It is too demanding. One does not demand of the vizier. One humbly requests. I set the stone aside. The oil in the lamp is burning low. The flame shrinks, the pool of light contracting around us. It is time. Finish the line, I tell my son. He completes the stroke and looks up. I nod. He wipes the brush and places the stone back in the basket. We prepare for sleep. In the summer, we might sleep on the roof to catch the northern breeze. But tonight the air has a chill that speaks of the coming winter. We will sleep in the bedroom, the small chamber at the back of the house. I walk to the rear of the house. In a niche in the wall, small statues of our household gods reside. There is Bess, the dwarf god with his lion's mane and protruding tongue, the protector of the home and sleep. There is Toweret, the hippopotamus goddess, leaning on the symbol of protection. I take a small pinch of incense resin and drop it onto the small coal brazier before the niche. A thin ribbon of white smoke rises, smelling of pine and spice. Safe sleep, I whisper. Keep the snakes from the door. Keep the scorpions from the floor. Keep the nightmares in the west. I strip off my linen kilt. The air is cool on my skin. I am naked now, save for a thin linen sheet I will pull over myself. The bed is a wooden frame with a webbing of woven cord. It is raised off the ground on legs shaped like the paws of a lion. I sit on the edge of the bed. My feet are throbbing. I rub the arch of my right foot, feeling the tight tendon. The physical toll of the walk to the valley is cumulative. Every day, the mountain takes a little more of my strength. Merritt lies down beside me. The bed frame creaks under our weight. She pulls the linen sheet up to her chin. Did the water carrier come today? I ask into the darkness. Yes, she whispers, but the price is going up. He says the donkey is sick. I sigh. It is always something. I will speak to him. I lie back. I do not use a pillow of feathers or wool. I reach for my headrest, the wurs. It is carved from sycamore wood, a curved crescent resting on a pedestal. I position it under the base of my skull, just above the neck. To a stranger, this might seem a torture device. To me, it is essential. It lifts my head, allowing air to circulate around my neck, keeping me cool. It protects the alignment of my spine. It keeps my ears away from any crawling insects on the bed. I settle the weight of my skull into the wooden curve. The pressure is firm and familiar. It triggers the body's response to shut down. The tension in my neck muscles releases. The room is pitch black now. The lamp in the outer hall has been extinguished. The only light comes from the stars visible through the small, high window, pinpricks of silver in a void of obsidian. I listen to the house. The breathing of my wife is rhythmic and slow. From the other room, the soft shifting of my sons on their mats. Outside, the village of the tomb builders is silent. We are a community of secrets, sleeping in the shadow of eternity. My mind drifts. I see the white limestone cliffs. I see the black ink swirling in the water. I see the endless rows of chisels. 1,242 copper chisels, all accounted for. My thoughts fragment. The logic of the scribe dissolves into the imagery of the dreamer. The darkness wraps around me, heavy and comforting like a blanket of black linen. The desert wind sighs over the roof, a long, hollow breath that carries away the day. I close my eyes. I am asleep.